What's up, ladies and gentlemen? This is the Fat Cats podcast. A little bit of a different intro. Wade not doing the intro this go around. Super excited to get into episode 72 here. If you're watching on video, you can tell different co-host. Wade has been pretty bogged down at work the past couple of weeks, so figured you guys still wanted to get an episode in. So I tagged in assistant basketball coach, Wingate University, Logan Springer, coming up. I'll go ahead and get ahead of ourselves. Cleveland Browns fan, Ohio State fan, Cleveland Guardians fan. We're recording this at 9:30 on Thursday. Logan's pretty juiced up right now, if you can't tell.
What's up, Bulls? My heart rate's racing, and it's not because the camera's on. Guardians just pulled one out. I know we're not a baseball pod, so I'll leave it at that. But I'm pretty fired up.
Yeah, man. So I'm not. You guys know I don't watch baseball a lot. I caught the last half of an inning of that game. Pretty good baseball game. Hard to beat playoff baseball. I will say, when you get in October, baseball starts becoming fun. So
Different sport in October.
do want to remind everybody real quick before we get into it, find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. Just type in the Fat Cats Podcast. If you're here, you know that. Be a friend, tell a friend, like, subscribe, comment. Um, Instagram and TikTok at Fat Cats Pod. Want to remind everybody, all of our Fat Cats Podcast gear, you can find the link in our bio. All the proceeds are going to help out with Western North Carolina hurricane relief. So if you guys want to give back to Western North Carolina, that's a great way to do so, and also get a Fat Cats t-shirt. Also want to give a shout out to our boy Novak, the Substack for betting. He's on a pretty good hot streak going on right now. So check out Novak on the Substack. We got first favorite forgotten. We got full plate empty stomach. We do have a question of the week this week. A lot of NFL news, a little bit of college football, some college basketball, and then we'll get into our previews for the week. Well, Logan, you're a long-time listener. We start off every episode. First favorite and forgotten, episode 72. Go ahead and kick us off, man.
That's right. My first 72 to come to mind was Mitchell Schwartz. Not a common name, but held down that tackle spot for the Browns for a little while, and he was just a nice plug-and-play piece for us.
Yeah, man. My first number 72 was Too Tall Jones. Great defensive lineman from a long time ago. I don't even know the years, but Too Tall Jones, one of the best nicknames in sports as well. So Too Tall Jones, my first 72.
Yeah, my favorite is a guy that was a Buckeye. He wore 55 for the Ohio State, so you're probably confused, but Isaiah Prince, O-lineman, he ended up wearing 72 for the Miami Dolphins. So some people might be like, huh? But that is my favorite 72 of all time.
There you go. I'm not going to lie. Didn't know Isaiah Prince until you talked him down.
Could have been a forgotten.
My favorite number 72 is Michael Bennett. Played on those Seahawks teams. Notoriously known for wearing the small shoulder pads in NFL history. So Michael Bennett, part of the Super Bowl team, part of the Legion of Boom, technically, I guess, and really fun D lineman to watch.
Now, Cam definitely loves guys in the trenches, so I had to get a little creative with my forgotten 72. I'm actually going to go back in time to the 1972 NBA championship with the Lakers Knicks, and your MVP of the finals was Wilt Chamberlain. Now, we go back and forth whether that 100 game happened or not, Cam, but let me tell you, he was pretty special in 1972, so that's my forgotten.
Yeah, Wilt, man. Some great all-time stories. Me and Logan share the belief. Just drop the footage, man, and we'll believe that that 100-point game happened. If Ward were here, he would say that Jerry West got robbed out of NBA Finals MVP. So my forgotten 72 is Eric Fisher. He played for the Chiefs for a long time. He's a number one overall pick. He was never a great left tackle, but he was played in the league for 10, 12 years. So I guess he's not a bad left tackle, but when you're a number one overall pick, you're expected to be perennial all-pro guy, and he just wasn't. But yeah, that's our first favorite forgotten. We move on to full plate, empty stomach. If you're new, full plate is somebody who had a good week in sports. Empty stomach is somebody who had a bad week in sports. Go ahead and kick us off, Logan.
Yeah, well, you heard it when we kicked off the pod, but my full plate's got to be the Guardians. Down 2-0 in the series, looking to go down 3-0, and they hit, get home run to tie the game in the bottom of the ninth, and they hit a walk-off in the bottom of the 10th. So they're riding high right now, and they've got a full plate, that's for sure.
There you go. They have a player, I'm not going to lie. Guardians didn't know anybody on this roster except for Stephen Kwan. I think that's his name, Stephen Kwan.
That's right.
Okay. They have a guy who hit a home run to top the game in the bottom of the ninth, and his nickname is Big Christmas. All time sport. You talk about Too Tall Jones, great sports nickname. Big Christmas is one of the better nicknames I can think of today's game. My full play is going to Liam Cohen. If you don't know who this guy was the OC at Kentucky for 2 seasons. Goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Baker Mayfield. They're leading the league in touchdowns and offensive rating and offensive yards and scoring points per game. So Liam Cohen, a guy who was kind of scapegoated out of Kentucky when Mark Stoops kind of let him ride off into the sunset into the NFL. He's having a great NFL campaign. So shout out to Liam Cohen.
Yeah. Speaking of Baker, I'm probably the biggest Baker fan you'll know, which kind of rides in my next segment. I mean, he planted the flag at Ohio State, which comes to my empty stomach. Ryan Day, I've been a huge Ryan Day fan, but you go into Oregon, you have the ball in the 28, and you throw 2 passes and you get a penalty, and all of a sudden you're outside of field goal range. I mean, that he did it at Georgia, in the playoff, and he did it on the road in your biggest game of the year. So I got to go Ryan Day here. I'm hoping he gets it back the rest of the year, but right now he's got a pretty empty stomach, Cam.
Yeah. What is your stance on like? Is this a guy that needs to be around for 10 more years? Need to prove it to you? Like, how are we feeling on Ryan Day and Ohio State land?
Ask me after the Michigan game,
Okay.
Cam. If you go beat Michigan, everything's forgiven.
Yeah.
But Kirby Smart started with a similar resume, and he's doing pretty well down there. So hopefully Ryan Day can bounce back and be in the same name and Mount Rushmore as those guys.
When's the last time Ryan Day won a big football game? Can you remember?
If you count Notre Dame last year on the road, I mean, it was about what week 3. I mean, it's tough. It's tough. But can't defend them in that one against Oregon. So
I get it. We'll keep it with coaches here. 3 coaches on full plate empty stomach. My empty stomach. All you Mountaineer fans out there, Neil Brown's getting my empty stomach, man. A guy that goes from on the hot seat every year to, hey man, he might be turning this program around here in Morgantown to, oh, this guy stinks. Let's get him back on the hot seat. I know Jonathan is cackling, laughing right now watching this. He wants Rich Rod back, which, hey, I'd take Rich Rod back right now. But Neil Brown had a quote this week where he said that they're asking him, how do you get WVU fans to show up? They're playing K-State this week, who's a ranked opponent, night game, nationally televised. Say, how do you convince the fans to show up? And he said, well, the fans have nothing to do with winning and losing football games. I would say there's going to be great weather, and you've had fun at every tailgate. So that's all you need to come out. So Neil Brown believes that having fun at the tailgates is actually more important than winning football games. So, and I love Neil Brown. He's from Kentucky, played at Kentucky, coached for Kentucky, and he's had a rough go at West Virginia. He also just lost a 4-star receiver, was committed to West Virginia, went to the same high school that Neil Brown went to, and he committed to Kentucky. So Neil Brown's having a rough week, folks. And Jonathan, let me know what you're thinking about Neil Brown right now.
Cam, I will say one thing. If there's ever one tailgate that could maybe convince you to go to a game, I got to give it to Morgantown. But when you're talking tailgates, you're in a bad spot as a football coach. You got to talk about the product on the field.
Yeah, for sure. But what better is there to do in Morgantown on a Saturday night than go to a tailgate?
Truth there.
We do have a question of the week. I keep wanting to call you Ward. I'm so used to saying Ward. So, Logan, we do have a question of the week. If you could travel back in time for one sporting event, what would it be?
Man, I've gone back and forth in my head on this one. I've been fortunate enough to witness some cool moments, but I gotta go with the Cavs winning in 2016. Yeah. I mean, as a Cleveland fan, I've seen one championship. You have the shot by Kyrie, the block by LeBron. My dad hadn't seen a championship in 52 years. I'm aging him a little bit, but I just remember, I think that's probably the only time I've maybe cried after a win in a sporting event. And I mean, that was just unbelievable. I was in the car the next day to go to the parade. So I gotta stick with my Cavs, and, hopefully the Guardians will get one soon. But I mean, that was just an unbelievable moment, and one that's talked about in NBA history.
That was awesome, man. LeBron, obviously one of our favorites. Wade's in the same boat. So, yeah, man, I as a Cleveland fan, if I was a Cleveland fan, that would be my answer as well. I think I would go with Rumble in the Jungle, Muhammad Ali, George Foreman. I think that would be an awesome event to go. If you've seen my office, if you've been, I think in the early episodes when we did in my room, you could see it. I've got the newspaper article hung up in my room. So, yeah, I would definitely go back and watch Rumble in the Jungle. I think would be my answer. But let us know what you guys think. What sporting event would you go to? And also, I think another good question: what sporting event do you wish you could relive? Like completely forget about it and go back to that moment when it happened.
Sure, sure. Drop it in the comments. You might even get El Spring getting some replies, and I'd love to hear what people think. I'm sure Justin will have some Clemson over Ohio
Yeah,
State
for
moments, so
sure.
me and him
For
might
sure.
have a little beef, but I'm excited to see what everyone thinks.
Yeah. We do have some top stories real quick. Devontae Adams got dealt to the Jets. It came out today, Logan. He declined a trade to the Chiefs in order to
Wow.
go to the Jets. What do you think this does for the Jets? If you're the Raiders, are you going full rebuild? Are you dealing Max Crosby now to try to get more draft capital? So where are you at with the Jets, and what do you think the Raiders do from here?
First off, that was news to me that he turned down a trade to the Chiefs. I mean, I don't know who turned down playing for Mahomes, but Aaron Rodgers got to be probably the one dude you would do it for. I think for Aaron Rodgers, in that offense, it'll help, but that O line's got some work to do, Cam.
Oh,
I mean, if that O line doesn't get better and doesn't improve, I don't think it's going to matter who's out there running routes. Obviously, people are going to say Garrett Wilson's going to see more one-on-one matchups. Allen Lazard's been fantastic, but at the end of the day, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't have time to throw and that run game doesn't get going, then it's not going to matter who's
yeah,
out there.
I agree. And the defense has got to step up. This is on paper one of the best defenses in the league, and the past 2 weeks they've been abysmal. So which is part of the reason Robert Salah got fired is because he's a defensive guy, and this defense
Sure.
has not been up to snuff the past few weeks. So I think it makes the Jets better. Does it take them from where they are to a conference championship contender, an NFL championship contender? I don't think so. You do have the relatability with Rodgers and Adams playing so many years in Green Bay. I think looking way into the future, having a guy like Devontae Adams with Garrett Wilson will only help him in the long run. But that's not what this Jets team is worried about. The Jets team is worried about winning right now while you have Aaron Rodgers, not 10 years in the future. So everything you can do to open up that window for Aaron Rodgers to go get a Super Bowl in New York, you do it. I think this 100% makes them better, but I don't know if it pushes them over the top to where they thought they would be and where they need to
Sure,
be.
and that window for the Jets is so small. I mean, I don't know how much football
Yeah.
Rodgers has left. He's so talented, but coming off an Achilles, he's older. You just don't know. Now, as on the Raiders' standpoint, I think for them this has got to be total rebuild. I mean, you go get something for your receiver before he starts to decline, and I think they did the right thing. And, they brought in Brady.
Yeah.
Their owner definitely saw that as a win. They traded Devontae, got a pick, and got Brady. He had some humor with it. But I think in the long run, Crosby's got to be on the table. I think you got to look at getting as many picks as you can. You still got a question mark at quarterback. You really got a question mark across that team, Cam.
Yeah. That whole team is a question mark to me. And when you talk about trading Max Crosby, the thing you have to remember, and me and James Fry talked about this for probably an hour when Devontae got dealt. Like, there is a very clear trade partner in Detroit right now
Sure.
that just lost Aiden Hutchinson. Max Crosby is from Michigan. He played at Eastern Michigan. Like, that is a very clear cut. That's the guy. That's where we should trade him to. The thing is, though, when you look historically, Raiders in the first round have been abysmal. So are you going to take a risk if you're Mark Davis and say, hey, I'm going to trust the front office for the millionth time to just stockpile draft picks and hope we don't mess them up again? Because go look at the first rounders they've had probably since 2017, and probably even going back to Al in the later days of Al, they have not hit on many first round picks. So
No.
is there a world where you can get a okay quarterback or some pieces instead of draft picks? I don't think so. Because the only teams that are going to be trading for Max Crosby are going to be contenders.
Sure.
They're not going to want to give up core pieces of their offense or defense to get Max Crosby. So weird spot for the Raiders and a team in the Raiders who not only don't draft good, but also are pretty well known for not getting the most value out of their guys when they trade.
Sure.
So I would not want to be a Las Vegas Raiders fan right now. I will say that. Now, Logan, I didn't want to start out with this one.
Yeah.
Your Browns did trade Amari Cooper to the
Sure.
Bills. What are your thoughts on that move for your Browns and then also for the Bills?
Sure. I mean, Cam knows I'm probably the biggest Browns fan. He knows, and Amari Cooper was a guy that, I loved. He broke the franchise record for single game receiving yards last season. You had Joe Flacco. It was a lot of fun, and you see this team out there this year. And it's just not the same. But you look at the trade, you look at Amari Cooper's contract. He's got 1 year left. You went and got what was it, a third and a sixth for Amari Cooper and a seventh. I mean, people forget we gave up a fourth. I think it was a fourth or a fifth. It was a fourth for Amari Cooper when we traded for him. And so, you go get more draft compensation back. Now, we've had very hard time drafting receivers. I mean, I could go through a laundry list. It's about like our quarterback t-shirt that you've seen or jersey with 37 names on it. So, Andrew Berry's got to get in the lab and go draft a guy now. But you took 20 million off the payroll this year. You're giving 60 of it, to Deshaun next year. So you help out with that. And ultimately, we're 1-5. We weren't going to make a run for the playoffs. We're in arguably the best division in football every year. I know the Bengals are down, but the Steelers look good. The Ravens look good. And ultimately you went and got, solid draft compensation. Yeah. So I was pleased with it. Obviously you hate to see a guy like Amari Cooper go. He was all about his business, never complained, never blamed anyone, was a guy that everybody loved. But ultimately I think it's the best thing for the organization.
Yeah. I think where this franchise went horribly wrong was letting it get out that they were trying to trade him for Brandon Ayuk.
Oh, 100%. Once you throw a name out there like that, you're isolating him.
Once that gets out there, it's might as well be over. Like this move to me was done when that came out. I'm with you on the 1-5. I know you got to pay Deshaun Watson a ton of money, but like, do we believe that Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore are going to step up and be even mediocre to pedestrian receivers for this offense?
All I say is when Kevin Stefanski's firing at his best, you just need sure-handed guys, right? Jarvis was a very solid player. Mm-hmm. He wasn't as elite as Amari Cooper, but our best year was with him out at receiver, know? And so I think when Stefanski's firing, you get the run game going, the trenches are better. I think ultimately we're a ground and pound play action guy. Yep. And as long as you have a guy like Jerry Jeudy who can fly, and if Elijah Moore can have sure hands, then I'm not too upset by it. And ultimately, what are you trying to do this year? You're not going to go make the playoffs. So at the end of the day, you had to re-sign Amari Cooper next year. And, I don't necessarily trust that receiving core, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, I get it. So, for the Bills, what do you think this does for the Bills?
I mean, I think a lot of people are saying it says a lot about Josh Allen. I think it more says a lot about the receiving core they have. I think Josh Allen now gets a sure-handed guy that is going to have his head on straight. He's about his business. I think we saw some interesting stuff about Diggs and Josh Allen and their relationship in Buffalo. And this is a guy that's not going to throw a wrench in the mix to a team that could win the Super Bowl. And I think Amari Cooper is going to be a great addition. I think Josh Allen gets the guy that he can finally rely on, to get open and to catch the ball. Yeah. I don't know if this, pushes him over the edge to, be, top, like number one in the NFL, but it at least gives them a better chance to compete in that division against the Jets, who we just talked about. Yeah. So,
well, the way I talked about Devontae Adams going to the Jets, I feel the complete opposite about Amari Cooper to the Bills. I think this instantly catapults this team into the second best team in the AFC, right behind Kansas City.
Sure.
We've seen what Josh Allen can do when he has a tried and true cut number one receiver. And Amari Cooper, I don't think he gets the praise he necessarily deserves. Like, that guy's one of the best in the business. And like you said, a guy that is all about his business. He comes in, he works. You don't really hear him talk about, this or that. He's not on podcasts. He's not on social media all the time. Sure. He just comes in, runs great routes, and catches the football. So I think giving a Josh Allen a guy like that is going to help him out a lot. And defense isn't great, like we said with the Jets, but to give Josh Allen a quarterback that is probably a top 5 quarterback in this league, a top 10 to 12 receiver who you talk about guys who are always open. Amari Cooper is always open.
Sure.
So I think this turns the Browns into a legit title contender, especially in the AFC, even a Super Bowl contender. So we'll keep it with the Browns. Nick Chubb is scheduled to return this week. So 13 months off of football.
Sure.
Or Logan. I keep saying word. Logan, how do you feel about Nick Chubb returning this week? And then I would like your overall thoughts on the
Sure,
Browns
sure.
since we're talking about it.
So I threw Cam off a little bit. If you're on camera, I have a Washington Commanders shirt on. So he's probably just looking at the shirt and thinking, Ward's over
Lex,
there.
can we talk about that?
Yeah, we can go into it.
So we've told this story, and we got it from Ward's point of view at one point, and I don't think that he quite remembered the situation. So Ward applied for a ticket sales job while we were in college for the Washington Commanders, his favorite football team of all time, and he's super excited about it. And I talked to my buddy Logan here, and Logan says, "Hey, I just got a ticket sales job with the Commanders." After Ward had spent, a week talking about it, he got to interview, all that stuff, and I had to break the unfortunate news that my best friend in Charlotte got the job that my best friend in Colby was applying for. So that was a fun crossover. But what was your point of view? Because I think I told you in the moment,
Yeah,
Ward had applied for that job as well.
Looking back, I'm no longer employed there. So, maybe Ward might have, outlasted me. He seems to be the sales guy. I'm not. But, at that point in time out of college, last month of college, you're just trying to find anything.
Yeah.
I was interviewing with probably 15 to 20 sports teams. My professor connected me with the manager there, and I ended up getting the call. I was super excited. I was like, man, I'm moving to DC, the big city, and Cam, I give Cam the call. I'm like, dude, like, just got an NFL job. Like, this is pretty sweet. And he's like, oh, what team? I was like, I'm driving. I'm like, dude, it's with the Commanders. Like, it's probably gonna be rough selling, with the ownership, stadium, everything. He's like, whoa, hold up, the Commanders. And at this point, I'm like, yeah, what's up? He's like, dude, my roommate is the biggest like Redskins Commanders fan ever. He just, had an interview for that job, and he found out he didn't get it. And I've been consoling him in his room for like 2 days. I had no clue who Ward was. Cam starts the podcast up and goes, "That's the guy that it was." And man, I felt bad, but that moving to DC, I don't know if Ward would have maybe lasted here and what those fans had to say, or maybe he would because he'd understand their frustration. But I'll say this: it wasn't an easy 9 months that I did there. I'll say that.
I would say selling tickets for Dan Snyder is quite the job to do.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting. I'll tell a quick story, then we'll move on. I remember we had a sales event, and it was right when Dan Snyder said that he could drop news that would bomb the NFL, and we had probably 200 potential ticket, buyers and clients coming in. And Thursday night football, Commanders about to play. We have it on the local news, and that story's running as we have 200 prospective clients coming in. Cam, we had people come in, see the story, and leave. I mean, you want to talk about selling tickets for Dan Snyder? That's a perfect example.
I believe it. And that just goes to show you, folks, when you have the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill on your resume versus when you have Western Carolina University on your resume, usually that guy's going to get the job coming out of college. But we got off track. Fat Cat style. We got off track. Nick Chubb at the Browns.
Sure. I mean, he put out a letter to the organization this week, and it was simply his agent called him and said, I've never seen a team stick by their player like this. And essentially, when he got hurt, end of his contract kind of near, he's an older running back, second knee injury, banged up. A lot of teams would just let him go at that position. It's a position that you can easily replace. Running back's probably the most replaceable position in the NFL. Right. And, he put out a thing saying, he wanted to thank the organization, but it's time for him to pay them back. So if Nick Chubb's got anything in the tank, Cam, that's the only reason I'll be tuning in on Sundays. Because other than that, I'm coaching at Wingate. We play on Sundays with our developmental team, and I'd rather be coaching those boys than looking at a football team that doesn't want to fight for their city. But I know one guy will, and that's 24. So it's good to have Batman back at running back.
There you go. I know Jeff Cottle just felt that everything you just said. Hardcore Browns fan, man. He's a great family friend, and I got him on Twitter, and man, every Sunday. It's like the Fanta video. I'm just waiting to see what Jeff Cottle has to say about the Browns on Twitter. So if you haven't seen a John Fanta video talking about the Browns on Sundays, they're fun. Going to the Steelers, Justin Fields looks. All indications are saying Russell Wilson is getting the start this week against the Jets, and I won't lie, I was pretty upset when I saw the news on Tuesday. I thought Justin Fields has been a really good football player for the Steelers. I think You got a guy who is 25 years old, showing all the steps of getting better week by week. Not to mention he's 4-2. Um, so seeing Russell Wilson get the nod kind of bothered me, but hey, I'm a Steelers fan through and through. I always say I don't care what the scoreboard looks like. I don't care what this looks like. Let's care if we get a win or a loss. So Russell Wilson goes and gets a win. Easy way to win over Steeler Nation. If you go lose a football game, Russell Wilson, get ready to get the feedback of Steeler Nation that wanted Justin Fields to keep his job.
I got a question. We got to go back in time here.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, we went through a carousel of some Steelers quarterbacks there between
yeah.
Big Ben and now that were, I mean, Duck Hodges, Mason Rudolph. I think Kyle Allen even snuck in the start or on the field or my.
No, Kyle Allen is on the roster now. So
okay.
It was Duck Hodges, Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, and then you said
Mason Rudolph.
And by the way, the only guy in that group who doesn't have a winning record out of those quarterbacks with the Steelers is Mitch Trubisky.
Wow. A little dig against my alumni here. Yeah. But let's just do a thought exercise here. Going into week 7, you're 4-2. Your quarterback has 10 total touchdowns?
10 touchdowns to 1 interception.
I was going to say one interception. Okay. Yeah. His completion percentage is the highest it's been in his career. He's been going through his reads at the highest rate. I saw a graph today at the highest rate of his career. Yep. He seems to be improving. Still a young guy, filled by the Bears. 4-2 going into week 7. Russell Wilson doesn't exist. How are you feeling about the Steelers?
Well, great. I feel like I don't think this is a Super Bowl contender, but you get in this world of 9-8, staying over 500. You look at the schedule, like this could be a 10-11 ball club, a 10 or 11 win ball club, in my opinion. So, if Russell Wilson isn't on this roster, like I'm so confident in Justin being the quarterback.
Sure. I mean, so then you throw Russ in the mix, and I get it. Tomlin's always been the guy that you might be good, but he's looking for great. Yeah, he's looking for that next guy, and I think Russ is better at getting other guys maybe involved than Fields. But Fields is definitely, I think, probably the more talented option with his legs. You saw some plays last week when the O-line broke down. I mean, where do you think the Steelers finish if Russell Wilson, finishes out the season versus Fields?
I don't know. Talk to me next week probably, because I haven't seen Russell Wilson. I didn't watch him for the Broncos last year, so sure. I haven't really seen Russell Wilson play meaningful football since he's in Seattle. So it's hard for me to say, but I do know that a guy that's 36 years old that had a bad year last year, who took the most sacks in the NFL behind the Steelers offensive line right now, which is down 4 starters. I don't feel confident that guy's because you see the way Justin moves. Justin saved probably 8 plays last week that would have been sacks or drive killers, and got positive yards or first downs or touchdowns. And I don't see Russ doing that. But on the flip side, the other argument is how many wide open guys has Justin missed because he's running that Fields hit or that Wilson hits. So not a huge fan of moving quarterbacks, especially week 7. Like if it was week 2, week 3, maybe.
Sure.
But I'm going to cheer for my guys regardless. So I hope Mr. Unlimited plays great, or he comes out in the first quarter and is terrible, and they put Fields back in and we win a football game. That's all I care about.
Sure.
Waiting all day for Sunday night, man.
Ain't that right?
But we move on. We got one quick college basketball thing. A guy that I know that you like, but he left a bad taste in my mouth. The way that no did he? Excuse me. I didn't like the way he ended things as a sports bettor with his final game in the NCAA tournament. But Tony Bennett did retire today. We did get the good news that it's not health related. It's more so the changing landscape of college basketball and college sports, period, that we've seen with a lot of great coaches. What is your thoughts on Tony Bennett retiring, and then what kind of legacy do you think he leaves behind?
I mean, it's always sad to see a pillar in college basketball go. You kind of saw it with Jay Wright. Now, Jay Wright, a little different level than Tony Bennett. But Tony Bennett, national champion, ran the pack line, which is kind of a forgotten defense. He's a legend at UVA, and you can't tell the story of college basketball without Tony Bennett. And so it's always sad to see a guy like that go. A lot of people were kind of
even without the national championship, you couldn't have told the story of college basketball.
Sure, sure. I mean, 16 versus 1, I mean, there's and plenty of NBA players, but everybody was kind of confused. Why are you doing this, 19 days before the season? And I'm drawing a blank on the coach's name, but his assistant coach, longtime mentee of Tony Bennett, actually left a head coaching job and returned last season. So
Okay.
a lot of people think that, Cam, he's doing this so that guy will take over.
Okay.
He's looking out for his associate head coach.
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank on the name, but total pro move if that's what he's doing and kind of handing off to his guy and giving his guy a shot.
Yeah.
So even as he retires, he's being as professional, as he can be. So I love it.
I get it. I, as a fan, don't love my head coach retiring 19 days before tip-off.
Sure.
But if that's the reason, I get it, because you don't want them to go through a coaching search. You just want to give it your guy. I think I have a little bit different of a perspective on Tony Bennett. Of course, great coach. There's no argument. He's a great coach, and he is a national championship winner. But I always like to think, like, if you take that national championship away, what do we think of Tony Bennett right now? Which you can't do, but you're thinking of a guy. He's won 6 tournament games since they won the national championship. All those came in the year they won the national championship. He's got bounced in the first round ever since he won that national championship. The year before, he loses to a 16 seed here in Charlotte. So I like him, I guess, but I think he's put up higher on coaching lists and rankings than I think he deserves personally.
I mean, it's totally fair. My argument would be, he's in what was the best conference in college basketball for a long time, and he was taking down the Dukes and the UNCs of the college world, and I think he did it in kind of a unique way. He wasn't always going after that big name 5-star, but then he was also developing NBA players. So you hear a lot of Duke fans and Kentucky fans talk about all the guys. I know Kentucky's a soft spot right now for Cam, but they talk about all the guys they put in the NBA, and those guys are NBA players when they step on campus. Tony Bennett, I mean, is developing guys outside of probably DeAndre Hunter, that were maybe not supposed to be NBA guys, and he's developing them. Now, I watched Kyle Guy bury a 3. I mean, I was literally wiping the sweat off the court when he did to beat UNC. So no love lost with Virginia, but I do think Tony Bennett's a pro's pro, and sad to see him go.
Yeah, for sure. You do lose, like Logan said, a staple in college basketball for a long time. So wish you nothing but the best, Tony Bennett. I hate that I had to rain on your parade there a little bit, but I did want to share my thoughts on your career. One more thing, and then we'll get to our previews for this week. There is a new proposal, and I want to get your take on it, Logan, for college football bowl games. Now, we see 12-team playoff. Bowl games have kind of went to the wayside the past few years since the implementation of the 14 playoff. Now that you've got 12, even more so, it's, who's going to be watching bowl games? When are you going to schedule the bowl games? So college football, or the NCAA, I guess, is putting together a proposal that would make the selection show stay the same, but the bowl games would take place on week 1 of the next season. So, for example, Kentucky played Clemson last year in the Music City Bowl, I think. I don't know. Whatever bowl they put, Gator Bowl. They put him in the Gator Bowl. So that game, instead of taking place on January 1st, would take place week 1 at the same venue against that team. So instead of playing them, on January 1st, we would have played them week 1 this season, Clemson versus Kentucky in Jacksonville. So what is your thought on that? And do you think this is good or bad for college football?
I think for the product itself, it's probably a good move. Except for us sickos that tune into all these 6-6 bowl games and their fan bases, I don't think a lot of people with the playoff are going to be tuning in.
Yeah.
However, I guess my question would be from the standpoint of the health of these smaller programs. Playing one more regular season game, takes away from a non-conference game. So I know we got a lot of West Virginia people, a lot of probably Marshall fans. They went up to Ohio State this year. That's a big paycheck. I mean, that funds probably their season. And so you lose, those opportunities. And I think that that's going to hurt a lot of the smaller teams. You don't get to maybe travel to the Bahamas or Vegas to see your team play. And it's kind of like delayed gratification.
Yeah.
But I do think for the product of college football, you get an awesome week one.
Mm-hmm.
I think your bigger team fans, where it's national championship or bust, if they don't make the playoffs, they don't want to watch their bowl game anyways.
Exactly.
I'm sure Justin, if Clemson doesn't get in this year, is going to be frustrated watching them, play, Kentucky or whoever. So getting that game to week one, you got something to be excited about for the other 7-8 months of the year. But I think for the smaller teams, it's pretty sad. Your App States, UNC Charlotte's, it's just kind of a sad, lost, kind of last hurrah of the season. So
I get it. I see both point of views. For the pro, you basically get rid of the opt-outs. Like these opt-outs that have been killing bowl games for the past few years, you get rid of that. So for the product, like you said, the product gets better. For fan bases, I think fan bases will be more excited for these games now because you come into a fresh new season. You come in and whatever the new guy is, whatever transfer portal guy you get comes in, and you're looking forward to week one. Whereas like for Kentucky last year, I was excited to play Clemson, but like we had a 7-5 season.
Sure.
Do I really care what happens in this ball game? Not really, except for the fact that it was against Justin Alford. But I think you get more hype to these games. But like you said, you take the little man out. And my biggest problem with this is the first year it's implemented, you rob these seniors of the bowl game. All these guys who have been in your program for 5 years who weren't going to opt out because they know they're not going to be pros. Don't get a bowl game. So I see both sides. I think it's a cool idea, but I do think, like you said, for the little guy and those seniors, maybe they just have to kind of be casualties of improving the sport.
And the portal. I mean, you forget the portal. Teams were losing half their starters. I mean, look at Florida State. They got a bowl game and everybody ditched it to enter the portal. And I don't hate on the players for it. They got to go find the best fit for them now that money's in play. I mean, they're their own brand, but it would allow for full-fledged teams to meet. You're not down on your backups. So I think, like I said, for the product, I think it's a total win.
I will say I cannot wait if this goes through. I cannot wait for the first game where a starting quarterback transfers from Louisville and goes to Georgia Tech. Well, they're ACC, so they go to
whoever they play in the bowl game.
They go from Louisville to Iowa, and they play week one. That'll be hilarious. A great story.
Talking about a culture change for a quarterback.
But we move on. We're going to start off with our college football previews. I'm going to stay with the betting because as a college basketball coach, I'm not allowed to bet. Sure. So we're not going to get any violations there for the Wingate basketball program.
Appreciate it, Cam.
But I do still want your thoughts on the game.
Sure.
We won't go over your spread. First game we'll cover, Tennessee or Alabama goes to Tennessee. Alabama's 3-point favorites. Roll Tide, roll, man. Blitz, Bama, blitz. I think Bama is going to kill Tennessee in Neyland Stadium on Saturday. I don't think it'll be close. And what's your thoughts on the game? I almost asked what your thought on the spread was. What's your thoughts on the game?
Week 4, this is like the game you got circled. Yeah. And all of a sudden, these two teams are, they're fighting to be alive for the playoff right now. Tennessee struggled against Florida. you're talking
Arkansas.
About
they lost to Arkansas 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Bama lost to
Vanderbilt. We saw history. I don't know if we'll see that again in our lifetime, but
that could be the biggest upset of our lifetime. We didn't get to watch it happen in our lifetime. We didn't watch App State beat Michigan. So you think there's no world where Vanderbilt should be playing with Alabama, especially this talent. That was the number 1 team in the country coming off a Georgia win. And goes to Vanderbilt.
Was that stadium finally finished or no?
No.
So they lost in a half-finished stadium to Vanderbilt.
In their defense, though, Vanderbilt no longer has a crane holding the scoreboard up. They do have the scoreboard, put on the wall and everything, but no, that stadium feels like it's been under.
Might be even worse to have to watch those replays.
A film session would not be fun.
But I will say this: it's going to be a fun game because both these defenses have been looking rough. Now, don't get me wrong, Tennessee's offense has kind of been struggling as of late, but Bama's defense looks rough. Tennessee's defense has not looked great, and so I think this will be maybe the fan favorite of the week. Jalen Milroe is going to make some fun plays. Nico's going to make some fun plays. But I gotta say, I think Bama goes in and rolls them. There's a lot of pressure on that coach right now. Milroe has been, pretty fantastic, and I think that, Tennessee struck iron a couple years ago and upset them, and I think Bama's got that in the back pocket, and I think they're going to go in and it'll be a shootout, but I think they'll end up winning by a couple scores.
I do need to say this because Novak will get mad if we don't. Alabama also coming off a tough win against the South Carolina Gamecocks in Columbia. So South Carolina gave them all they wanted. Like South Carolina got that ball back with a chance to win the football game. So Alabama not firing on all cylinders right now by any means. I do want to disagree with you on one point. To me, Tennessee has a national championship level defense. I really truly believe that. And their offense is bad, which under Josh Heupel is never something I thought that I would ever say in my life. I did see a stat. I think in the past two SEC games, Tennessee has not scored a touchdown in the first half. So you've actually got to tell of two teams that were almost made for each other. You've got an awesome offense in Alabama going against a terrific defense in Tennessee. And you've got a bad offense in Tennessee going against an even worse defense in Alabama. Sure. So 3 points is too close to me. I think Alabama has the athletes to expose this Tennessee defense. But I did see a funny quote as well talking about Alabama. Their wide receiver coach was on the podium this week, and they were asking about 17-year-old superstar freshman Ryan Williams. And they said, do you think that Vanderbilt doubling him took him out of the game and kind of messed with the game plan? And he said, I don't think so. He said, I think that, as a 17-year-old, you're going to hit a wall as a freshman in this league in the SEC. And basically went on a 5-minute parade telling defenses to no longer double team him because he's already hit the wall. So I thought that was great.
Coach speak. That's what that is.
Michigan travels to Illinois, another road team favored. Michigan 3.5-point favorites. My favorite bet of this week, Logan, is the over-under is set at 44.5. I'm banging the under on this game. So two tough, hard-nosed teams that run the ball a lot, and two teams that lack quarterback play tremendously. So old school Big Ten matchup. What do you think?
Man, it doesn't get more Big Ten than this.
Yeah, I know.
Cam is going to have about 5 different guys on these O-lines and D-lines that he's going to be pausing and replaying, and we got to get eyes on him, Novak. This is the future Steeler right here.
Writing him in my notebook.
And I'm telling you what I'm doing right there. I'm writing them behind him, and I'm sending them to the Browns front office. But, this is an interesting Michigan team. Yes. They don't, have a quarterback I think that they trust. They went out and lost a tough one at Washington. Mm-hmm. But they also bullied a USC team for 2.5 quarters and then bullied them in the last drive. So I think it depends what Michigan team you get. Historically, Illinois, has rolled over to teams like Michigan. They've just gotten bullied. But
I will say, though, Brett Bielema wins a game like this every year, and he wins it 13-10.
Sure.
So he hasn't got it yet. These are 2 ranked Big Ten teams, which Illinois being ranked right now is crazy. But, I think this is an old school Big Ten 3 yards in a cloud of dust matchup. I hope it rains in Illinois and Springfield.
Is it too early for snow? We get some flakes.
I want this to be a mud bowl. I want the hashes inside the hashes. I want it to be straight mud. I want this to be an old school Big Ten matchup so bad, which would line my pockets a little bit. For Ward, even though he's not here, we are going to cover NC State traveling to Cal Berkeley. Cal is a hefty 10-point favorite, man. I know that the track record this season in the ACC and Big Ten of teams going across time zones, usually the team that travels struggles. And I know this NC State team is not very good. I cannot see a Cal Berkeley team blowing out NC State. So I think NC State loses. I do think they cover the 10, though. But a team that you've watched closely as a Carolina grad and fan, I'll say you're a fan as well. NC State, they lack so much, especially with Grayson McCall going out and spending so much money on him in the transfer portal. What's your thoughts on State, and then what's your thoughts on this game?
Coming into this game, you think State, Cal. You're thinking Cal's going to roll right over and State's going to win. Historically, I've caught you and Ward talking about it. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. State's O-line has been pretty pretty rough this year.
Miserable.
I was trying to put it nicely, I guess. Yeah.
Miserable is a favorite.
Okay.
They've been bad.
Okay.
And
So
there's a few guys on that O line that I
sure,
know and I love today.
sure,
They've been bad.
sure. Well, I don't know Cal's D line. I'm not circling guys like Cam, but if your O line's struggling, it doesn't necessarily matter who's on the other side of those trenches. And you're on the road, you got a time change. I don't know when State got out there. I hope it was before today. I hope they're adjusting. It's tough. It's one of those games we talk about. We hate for the kids having to go out there in the middle of the season, but I think State's going to come out and they're going to fight though. I think they're going to fight. For their coach and I know they're down their quarterback and it's tough. I thought Grayson McCall was a great addition in the transfer portal, so to see him go down is always tough. But I think State will muddy it up. I think Cal will end up winning the football game, and I'm a little biased, against the Wolfpack down the road. But I do think State's going to come out and they're going to see what people are thinking about them, and they're going to come fight, in my opinion.
Yeah, I do want to give a few shout outs on this game. Anthony Carter, playing guard for NC State, played with him for 2 years at Butler. Love the kid to death. He's a great guy. So shout out to him, former Butler guy. And then I wish Grayson was playing because you look, Grayson went to Porter Ridge.
Yeah.
Cal has a left guard named Will McDonald, who also went to Porter Ridge.
That's where he ended up.
Yes.
Coastal.
Yes.
Wow.
So both of them went to Coastal together. He's at Cal. Obviously, Grayson's at NC State. Two guys that for 2-3 years I tried to recruit to come to Butler. Wouldn't do it. Stayed at Porter Ridge. So Will McDonald's a guy I'm close with. So I'm definitely cheering for him. I do funny story. He transfers from Coastal to Cal, and Cal had already officially announced they were joining the ACC. So I did send him a message. I say, "Hey, glad you're staying close to home, keeping it in the ACC." But yeah, three guys that I know pretty well that are playing against each other. So that's always cool.
That's really cool.
We move on. Georgia travels to Austin. So all my MVP homies, shout out. Georgia travels to Austin. Texas 5.5 point favorites, or 5 point favorites, excuse me. My biggest takeaway from this is what a scheduling mishap for college football. F1 in Austin, and you're bringing the Georgia Bulldogs to town to go watch those guys drive cars? No chance. But in all seriousness, I think Texas is a better ball club. Carson Beck has shown us over and over and over and over and over again that he is not a guy that's going to win you football games. So I think Texas takes care of it at home. I think they cover the 5.5 point spread. For the first time in a long time, I think you look at these rosters and say Texas has a better ball club than the Georgia Bulldogs.
My question of the week is going to be, what's Matthew McConaughey going to do? I mean, you got F1 in town. All his buddies are going to be there.
He's going to be at this football game.
Oh, I know. He's about as Texas as it gets. I mean, I think he gets shown more than their quarterback. You have Arch Manning on the sideline, and they spend more time talking about Matthew McConaughey. But, I think last week you saw Quinn Ewers come out and struggle early, getting his feet back under him. I think he's a really good player. And, I think this is a get right week for him. He's always shown up in big games. I remember he took Bama, in that first half before he got hurt. I think he's the difference maker. If you're going to choose two positions, it's Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers. And I think Texas wins, but I think Georgia comes out with a little something to prove. They went down to Mississippi State, or they actually hosted Mississippi State. I think.
No, they went to
Starkville, and they did not. I think fire at the way Kirby Smart wants them to be firing. They're kind of like that old clunky car it's still moving, but it's a little hard to start right now. And we saw that in the Bama game, and I think if they come out from the kickoff, it'll be a great game. But I think there's always that chance that they'll get behind early and maybe not lay over, but lose. And so I'm gonna take Texas in a close one, Cam.
Yeah, I like it. We move on. My Kentucky Wildcats somehow miraculously off of Vanderbilt loss at home are 2 point favorites going to the Swamp in Florida. This is one of those games where you look at it, and I can't decide. So I'm going to ask you, and you tell me. Is this a must-win for Kentucky, or is this a can't-lose for Kentucky?
I got to go can't lose.
I agree, man. Your Mark Stoops. Mark Stoops is 2-10 in his last SEC home games in Kroger Field. But you look at his road record, you're like, who is this guy? These guys are the road warriors. You're going to the Swamp. The last time Florida beat Kentucky in the Swamp, gas was $1.90 in North Carolina.
Love those days.
Yeah.
Love
So
those back.
Lagway does come in. Their freshman phenom takes over for Graham Mertz. So that is a storyline to look at. Kentucky is historically bad against mobile quarterbacks and guys with rocket arms. So I don't want to go against Kentucky because the thing about Kentucky is every time you're like, man, this team stinks. I'm ready to. I don't even care about this team anymore. They go and win a huge game. Now, keep in mind, folks. Like I know Kentucky's had Florida's number the past few years. Billy Napier, by the way, is on 0-3 watch against Kentucky in his career. This is the same team that had a 50-year win streak against Kentucky. So historically, this is Florida's football game. Just recently, Kentucky goes to the Swamp and wins. But like we said, this is a can't lose for Mark Stoops. I'm seeing a 21-20 victory. Oof. Florida covers the 2, but I think Kentucky goes down and pulls one out in the Swamp.
Now, remind me, it's Brock Vandergriff?
Yes, Brock Vandergriff.
Cam has an all-time quote with Brock Vandergriff. We're watching the Georgia game here at his house, and he goes, man, watching Brock Vandergriff is like watching one of those Revolutionary War soldiers load a rifle every time he throws it. I mean, his throwing motion, somebody might need to get fired. I don't know.
It's a long time.
I don't know who taught him that. It's about like a bad jump shot, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it looks like Byron Leftwich in slow motion.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
It's bad.
Yeah. But from what I've heard from Cam is he's had a couple good weeks. And, if I think if he comes out and does what he, should do, I think y'all scrape one out down in Florida.
This all comes down to the defense, man. This Kentucky defense is awesome. They did not show that last week, so you look for them to bounce back, and you look for your offense to do just enough. If this offense can score 21 points, I think Kentucky wins this game. Do look for your boy Chip Trayanum. Is on pace to play for first time as a Kentucky Wildcat. Just brings a different back to Kentucky, a power back, a downhill guy. Where you look, Jamarion Wilcox, which all-time quote from Stoops on Jamarion Wilcox, averaged. Here, let me get into this first of all. Jamarion Wilcox is a freshman, and I think he's from Archbishop in Ohio. He averaged 11 yards per carry against Vanderbilt last week. And in the postgame, Stoops was asked, hey, why does Jamarion Wilcox not get more carries? He had like 6 carries. And Stoops gets kind of the angry look Stoops always gets on his face. And he goes, why doesn't he play a lot? Maybe tie your shoes. How about that for a start? Tie your cleats. He goes, the guy goes out there, his cleats are untied. He goes and rushes for 12 yards, and he's got to come out of the game because his cleat fell off. And it's like,
I would love to see that dorm room as a freshman. I mean, that kid hasn't done laundry since he went home.
It was a funny quote, and but yeah, you get the change of pace back with Chip Trayanum as a guy who's in that mold of Benny Snell and Chris Rodriguez, the guys that get downhill. And then you have Demi Sumo Karmbe, top 5 name in sports, by the way. DSK comes in. My uncle calls him Patience because he's the slowest running back of all time. He runs a lot like Le'Veon Bell did it for the Steelers, but now you've got a 3 stable running back field, and you can take some of that pressure off Brock Vandergriff. So I don't know how I got on that whole spiel about running backs, but Chip Trayanum will.
I'm excited to see it. He left a crowded backfield at Ohio State, but I thought he was pretty solid. And speaking of backfields, as we move to the NFL, we got Bengals Browns.
What a transition there, by the way. He's taking the host seat out of
I'm doing my best here, I'm trying to bring some personality, some flair, and, whatever. Maybe I'll get an invite back. I've had a good time talking ball, but, you got Nick Chubb coming back. You got a Bengals team that, struggled, they've lost a close one to the Commanders. That Giants game was a rough watch. And you have a Browns team that for the past 3 years has kind of owned the Bengals. I think Joe Burrow's only beat us once. I know he's been banged up a couple of the other years, but you got an angry Nick Chubb, back to prove some things.
Jerome Ford.
No Jerome Ford.
So this whole, we're going to kind of, get Nick Chubb up to speed. We're going to carry limits. All that. That's out the window.
Yeah.
There's no other running back on it. Freeman. Yeah. Freeman. That's all we got to say. Nick Chubb is going to get a line share.
By the way, when Freeman got his first carry, I thought it was Kareem Hunt. I was like, did we sign Kareem Hunt back? 27, the hair.
Like, what are you trying to say?
Oh, come on now. Why are you doing me like that? Come on. Anyways, you know, Freeman on the way down. I hate to say it, don't want to dog a guy, player pause. But, Nick Chubb coming back, I hope he's got a little left in the tank. If he does, I think the Browns have a shot to pull it out. I think the defense has been improving. Our injury list is still 20 players long. But ultimately, the Bengals are going to come out with something to prove. We're a down team. We've been getting blown out. I mean, Eagles, grinding one out against us. I think the Bengals will ultimately do the same. However, depending what dog pound we get, could go our way. But I'm not seeming hopeful.
Yeah, Bengals 5.5-point favorites. I don't see a world where they don't win this game by 6 or more points. Personally, unless Nick Chubb just goes back to prime Nick Chubb, no injury, and just goes for 220, 2 touchdowns, which I do have in fantasy. So Nick Chubb, if you'd like to do that for your boy, go ahead.
I second that.
But I think this Bengals team is too good to be this bad. Is what I've been saying for a long time. Like they're too good of a football team to be this bad. So I think they get back on track, going to Cleveland. And at the end of the day, the Browns are just nameless gray faces, and the Browns is the Browns. So Houston travels to Green Bay. This is going to be a fun matchup. The home team gets the 2.5-point nod here with Green Bay being the favorites. This has all the potential to be the most fun game on the slate this week. You've got two young quarterbacks going at it, two star-studded offenses. I think Houston goes to Green Bay and wins the football game.
Wow. I was actually
even without Nico Collins, I think that this Houston team is that good.
I was coming in, with the Packers. I will say, I think we lost a bunch of great quarterbacks in the last 3 to 4 years, and you have a fun matchup of Jordan Love versus CJ Stroud. To me, this is the overreaction game, right?
Yeah.
Whoever outplays the other, people are going to start putting them in their rankings, right?
Sure.
Like, oh my goodness, Jordan Love looked amazing. He's higher than Stroud, or Stroud looked amazing. Whatever. I don't get into any of that. Lambeau Field, even as a second-year quarterback, that's going to be a different monster
for sure.
Josh Jacobs has struggled a little bit early, and that's a tough Houston defense. So I think this game really, rides on his shoulders. I think if they can get that run game going, is it Emmanuel Wilson? Who's their other running back? It's the younger guy.
You got the wrong guy if you're looking for
not
deep on the Green Bay.
Yeah, but they have another running back that's a little more explosive in the passing game. I think if they can get those guys going and get Jordan Love, a little pressure off, I do think these two defenses are going to be fun to watch. Everybody's looking at the quarterbacks, and I think it's just going to be a close Green Bay win.
Okay, I like it. We move on. My favorite non-Steelers team, the Detroit Lions, go to.
Why is that, Cam?
Huh?
Why is that? Come on, those trenches got to be fun to watch.
Man, you watch that offense. Ben Johnson's done such a great job with this offense. That GM has done such a terrific job building this team from the inside out, which in my opinion is the only way to build a team. You get the linemen, then you build out from there. This is such a fun football team to watch for a guy like me. You got two running backs who, when you talk about yin and yang, like these are the perfect combinations for each other. And you've got a quarterback who, was kind of thrown to the wayside in Los Angeles. He gets to Detroit. You say, hey, we don't need you to go win football games. We need you to not lose football games. We're going to give you explosive passing patterns, all that stuff. I love watching the Detroit Lions. I love their head coach. When the day that Tomlin finally walks away, Dan Campbell's my first call, and I'm making him tell me no 17 times. So Detroit goes to Minnesota to play the Vikings. Vikings are 1.5-point favorites. I think Detroit. I know Sam Darnold's been awesome. I know this offense is so electric. They've got the best receiver in football. I think Detroit goes to Minnesota and gets a divisional win. And I think that this is going to be a tough, pounded-out game, and I don't think Minnesota's built for that.
By the way, in August, this is not a game we're circling.
No.
I mean, the Vikings have been unbelievable.
Yes.
I think we kind of knew what we were getting with the Lions. Mm-hmm. I mean, you returned, Monty and Gibbs. By the way, great play in fantasy. I'm kind of jealous I didn't think of it myself.
For those of you who don't know, I did draft both the Lions running backs in my fantasy league and my college league. Ben Misk, you don't know who Ben Misk is, but Ben Miskelly, for weeks upon weeks, told me how stupid I was for drafting both those guys. So now every week I have to send a text telling Ben, hey, Ben, give me a history lesson on fantasy football when you've got two guys that get 20 touches a game.
Sure. But, it's a game that we didn't have circled in August. And so you get a freebie. I see this as a freebie, a great matchup you didn't think you'd have. I mean, this was the game that you your fantasy players are going for 50 points preseason. You're like, oh man, these running backs are going to be awesome. And they still might be, but I got to ride with the Lions here. I think the best way to win a football game like this against that Vikings offense is to keep them off the field. And with that run game and those trenches, I mean, the Lions, the only thing I will say is the Lions have to be riding as high as possible coming off that Cowboys win. The Vikings too, though. But I do think the Lions keep them off the field and keeps, Sam Darnold on the sideline, and ultimately Justin Jefferson. So I think the Lions win. I think it'll be a little low scoring than I think people think. I think the Lions will keep it to, a couple drives, a quarter for the Vikings. I think they'll squeak one out.
If either team scores more than 27 points, I'll be very surprised, to be honest with you in this game. We move on. Kansas City going to San Francisco. San Francisco 2-point favorites. The San Francisco team, when you talk about Christian McCaffrey and you talk about this team, and then you look what Jordan Mason is doing, he's hurt. So insert new running back into the Kyle Shanahan scheme, which is just made for running backs. I think San Francisco comes out and wins this football game. I know Kansas City, seems to have the luck of the Irish or the luck of the zebras or the luck of the whatever you want to call it. But I do think San Francisco right now at home will be a better football team. Kansas City, Kansas City lost their number one receiver and their number one back. I know Travis Kelce is a dude.
Sure.
But this isn't 30-year-old Travis Kelce. This guy has, definitely seen the end of his days. As amazing as Pat Mahomes is, I just think that he won't. I don't think this offense will be on the field enough for them to, take it out of San Francisco's hands. I think San Francisco wins the game.
This is a tough game to pick. I mean, you have two of the best offensive coaches that we've seen in our lifetime.
Ever.
Yeah,
in the game.
Yeah, and I want to say the Chiefs' injuries, start to get to them, but man, you just cannot pick against this team to lose. I mean, they find ways, whether you want to say it's the refs or if you want to say it's Mahomes or you want to say it's Andy Reid. I think we've seen a different Travis Kelce the last couple of weeks. I think that connection's picking up again. They still got speed with Xavier Worthy.
Sky Moore.
Yeah, you said it. He's playing football. You're in trouble. But I mean, we saw a guy in Juju Smith-Schuster have 100 yards and kind of a revival. I'm not going to say he's going to do that again. I'm sure you have some thoughts on him. But, Mahomes is going to, in my opinion, find a way. I think that defense and that run D has been so stifling. I mean, everybody talks about Mahomes, they get forgotten.
Yeah.
But I think that with the banged up running backs, I think that the Chiefs, are going to kind of disrupt Brock Purdy. Ayuk, unless Ayuk shows up, I think that the Chiefs will grind one out. Probably not the shootout that we were hoping for, but I think the Chiefs squeak one out there on the road. You can't choose against, in my opinion, a top 3 quarterback of all time with Patrick Mahomes.
I get it. I don't think there's a bad pick in this game. I will say that. Last game we'll cover the Jets with their newfound wideout, Devontae Adams, go to Pittsburgh. They go to Heinz Field. I'm not calling it Acrisure, it's Heinz Field to face the Steelers. The Jets are 2-point favorites. Russell Wilson seemingly getting his first start. I'm not going to say it till I see it because I'm still holding out hope that 2 gets the start. But what will be Russell Wilson's first start for the Pittsburgh Steelers? He goes up against the Jets. Honestly, I can't believe the Jets are 2-point favorites in this game. I don't know if the line changed when they announced Russell Wilson. I think through and through, position for position, besides wide receiver and cornerback, the Steelers are the better football team. I just saw the Jets get ran on for 200 yards in a primetime game. I think the Steelers are going to play old school Steeler football. I think Russell Wilson, if he stays in the game, is going to find open receivers out of the play action. I think the Steelers win this game.
I've been watching a lot of Steelers games with Novak and Cam because my guy Justin Fields has been at quarterback. He's a Buckeye, one of my favorite players ever. Now that he's benched, though, a bone in my body cannot root for the Steelers. My dad might kick me out of the house. That being said, though, we talked about at the beginning of the show, that Jets O-line is rough.
Bad.
I mean, I'm a Myles Garrett guy, but TJ Watt might be the best player in football when he's on. And he's an X factor. I think he wrecks that game. I can't remember a Steelers primetime game at home that, y'all, I'm sure Cam, the encyclopedia, has some, but recent memory, at least how it feels, Steelers always come out on top of those games. And
2 weeks ago.
Okay, I went to bed hand up. It was late. I had
That was
6
the
a.m.
rain.
practice.
That was the lightning.
You know, yeah, it's a little bit of luck there by the
I think you were
Cowboys.
rubbing it in.
I really wasn't.
Then they
I really
followed it up
wasn't.
with a 50-point loss
You
to the
know,
Lions.
yeah,
It's just
yeah, yeah. I genuinely forgot they played on prime time. But hey, I'll give any chance I can rub it into a Steelers fan, I will. That being said, I mean, you look at the trenches. The Steelers I think, are going to win this game old school Steeler fashion. I mean, I see Najee Harris getting better and better every week, which is crazy to say because he's a guy that is always getting crushed. He's got a bunch of carries. Which I think I'd like to see some Jalen Warren this week. Maybe get some pop in that backfield. I think this is a game where, unfortunately, if Russ does start, he won't have to do much. I think it's play action, run the ball, and I think the Steelers will ultimately bully him for 4 quarters and pull it out. I feel bad for Aaron Rodgers in this game.
Well, we saw a shift in the scheme last week with the Steelers against the Raiders. Arthur Smith historically is an outside zone guy. He had a guy in Derrick Henry who was great at it because when Derrick Henry gets going, he's impossible to stop. Najee Harris is different. He's a downhill back, and we saw more of that gap scheme and that vertical run scheme against the Raiders. I hope we keep that going. I know it's harder to do the play actions that Arthur Smith likes to do out of that vertical run as opposed to horizontal runs. But if it helps Najee, then that's the most important thing because getting this running game is the most important thing. Like you said, Jalen Warren is fully healthy and back, so having that change of pace back that isn't a guy who was a substitute teacher 2 weeks ago in Champlin. Yeah. Having Jalen Warren back is going to be a huge deal, and I'm just excited to see the Steelers in prime time. I will say, watch this game. Look at the uniforms the Steelers wear. They're going back to the block uniforms, gray face mask for the throwback uniforms or whatever. I will shout it from the rooftops. Please make that our permanent uniforms. Those are some of the best uniforms in sports, and they've got these stupid numbers that are curved. Go back to the block numbers, man. Go back to real Steelers football, please.
Now, I got one question for you, though, Cam, because it seems like every couple weeks someone disrespects the terrible towel. Do the Jets have a history of disrespecting the terrible towel? Because that'll change everything. If they do, then, I mean, the Steelers might win by 20.
I can't think of a time. Honestly, I can't think of a time we played the Jets since the AFC Championship game when Rex Ryan was a coach and Bart Scott said can't wait.
So. And Aaron Rodgers is too smart to do something like that. Yeah. I would like to think. Well, I don't know if smart's the word, depending who you are in his offseason decisions. But anyways, I mean, I think that, that Steelers team is more physical when Renegade plays. Yeah. Cam's going to be on his feet. I mean, you should see him when Renegade comes on. I mean, he gets up and gets going. But yeah, I mean, I think you'll be excited when you wake up that next morning.
Yeah. Well, guess who haven't gotten a phone call this week? Uncle Weezy, Jets fan, not called me this week for some reason. So I guess it's officially hate week here in the Taylor family. So we move on. That was our NFL preview. We do have a pet peeve of the week. Logan wanted the full Fat Cats experience, so we brought back pet peeve of the week for him. Logan, go ahead and kick us off.
Speaking of phone calls, it's funny you say that. My pet peeve of the week, and I love my mom to death, but she's like the queen of this. When someone calls you, and I mean you miss it because you're driving, whatever, and you hit them right back. Like I'm talking like you just missed it. You hit that button and call them right back, and then what happens? Ring, ring. Ring. Hi, this is so and so. Sorry I missed you. Like, really, what are we doing? Come on. Like, in today's age, you're on your phone. Cam made a good point. He said sometimes he calls the next person.
Yeah, that's my thing. I'm notoriously bad at this. If I call somebody, like if I want to talk about something, and I call somebody and they don't pick up, I just call the next person, and then if you call me back and I'm already on the phone with somebody else, I can't just be like, oh, by the way, the person I called first to talk about this is calling me back.
Hey, that's totally fair. I'll stick with the pet peeve to maybe family members. You think something's wrong, you call them back, they don't answer, then you're kind of just left wondering, like, And so that's my pet peeve. My mom's, she's the queen of it. She'll call me, I'll call her right back, and I don't hear from her for 10 minutes. So that drives me nuts.
Mrs. Springer is notorious for fat shaming people.
Hey, can I tell that story real quick?
Of course.
So it's my birthday. Dad loves to go boating, so they're nice enough. They rent a pontoon. They're like, hey, bring a couple friends. So I bring our buddy Hollis, buddy Jack, and Big Cam over here. And well, Hollis gets on the boat. We drop anchor.
I am by far the heaviest man in this group. Everybody else is 150 to 170 maybe. And then you got the 300-pounder on the boat.
And so Hollis gets up on top of the pontoon and does, a sweet backflip off the back. And my mom's already nervous. She's got kids that aren't hers, no life jackets, Hollis just does this impromptu. And she's like, ah. And so Cam gets up and goes, all right, my turn. And she goes, whoa, don't. And Cam looks her straight in the face and goes, why? Is it because I'm fat? So to this day, we'll get on my mom about it anytime Cam's over. Is it because he's fat?
she'll never outlive that one. That'll follow her for the rest of her life, man. But yeah, my pet peeve of the week. I experienced this yesterday in a tough loss for the Northeast Eagles. Parents at middle school football games can be insufferable. Everybody's parent. Everybody wants to see their kid do well. I get it. Everybody wants to see their kid get in the game. To all you parents out there that go to games and wonder why your kid's not coming and playing in the game or doing well or whatever, I have some advice. Go watch a few practices. See what your kid does in practice, and then if you still want to get mad at the games, go ahead and get mad. But middle school parents at football games are a tough crowd to be around.
Hey, I totally get it, especially at that age. I mean, there's no scholarship on the line now. I'll leave it at that, but we won't recruit a kid sometimes depending on the parents. So sometimes they shoot themselves in the foot.
For sure. So. For sure. But that was episode 72 of the Fat Cats podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. Appreciate you coming on. We had to call somebody in. We had to call them out of the bullpen. So
I gotta say, Ward owes me a lot of beer for making it this far. So I'm gonna pass it along. If you listen this far to replacement Ward at El Spring and you put up with this voice, I owe you a beer.
You might get a lot of fun. Ward has like a stipend in his where you have to redeem it within like 20 minutes of the podcast dropping so nobody gets to it.
24 hours. 24 hours. Maybe it'll be a Milwaukee's best. I don't know. Something that won't hurt the pocket.
But super excited. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for coming on again. If you guys are in the North Carolina area, go check out a Wingate basketball game for our boy, man.
Appreciate the free plug, man.
Yeah, great team this year. You got a bunch of starters coming back and fun guys coming in. So go check out the Wingate Bulldogs. And I know we say this every time. Find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, Instagram, and TikTok at Fat Cats Pod. We appreciate you guys.
Yes, sir.
Peace.